Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Nemesis Diaries. Oh, we've had happenings, lots and lots of happenings. For those of you that have been paying attention over the past, let's see here, we're working on 6 months of this nonstop circus. You know, while I'm trying my best to just focus on being productive, working on my stream, and I've done a really good job of that, by the way. It is growing and flowing. The Red Pill Fight Club expands. The Horde groweth. New followers daily. New faces in the chat. Even some old faces returning to the chat. Yes. Man, it is cold this morning. I will tell you that. Ooh, brr. So I got this big, heavy, nasty ass coat on. Oh, look at it. Listen to this. Hurt feelings. Don't care about your hurt feelings. Little morning jacket ditty for you. Anyhow, I digress. It's growing and it's flowing. I'm very blessed. I'm very appreciative of that. Sometimes, you just let God take the wheel. And it can get a little frustrating, when you... For a while, I was sitting at like 799 followers. I would gain 3 and then lose 2, then gain 5, then lose 3. And there's a rash of bots that have been happening on Rumble. Now, it's not the Rumble bot that Riri's don't understand. The people that don't understand technology, it's like those, the cargo cults. Some of the islanders who had never seen airplanes before, never seen, airplanes making airdrops. They started to worship these things as some sort of gods. Well, there are people on the inner zones who were born in the first world, had inner zones almost all their life, have had high-speed inner zones on their phone for at least the past 15 years, and they actually act and behave just like cargo cults, not understanding things. It's kind of the focus of this video. It's the not understanding things, the modern primitives that we see living on the inner zones is, usually the ones in the ponds who believe the world is flat. They don't understand the world around them, the nature of reality. So how can you really trust any of their beliefs? They believe that they're not racist, even though they use racial slurs all the time, openly. We're not talking like in their private conversations where someone had to listen in with a cup to the wall. No, we're talking about openly in their chats, openly in their comment sections, openly on their social media. Where they also follow open racists who post things like "Who white power" and things like that. And they call each other brother and, and sister and hello friend. They clearly are an active, cohesive group. Well, except for when they're accusing each other of being feds and banning each other from their chats because, you just can't have any dissent. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? Typical left-wing thinking. You dissent? You're bad. You're so bad when you dissent. Stop. It's crazy. When their entire existence is living for drama, not dissent. Dissent is like, well, I disagree the world is not flat. I disagree. No, you do not have a sovereign citizen rights. You are a retard who doesn't understand Constitution, your Bill of Rights, or law. That's why some of them have wound up in prison because they thought that they don't need to have a driver's license, registration, or insurance to drive around in a vehicle with illegally possessed weapons because they're a felon with serial number scratched off, which also increases the level of felony to an additional felony. Yeah, these kind of people are just Riri's. I can beat up a female cop, this person says in their video, because the female cop was smaller than them. Boop, boop, crazy. So these people exist. They exist. It's 100%. And they exist in this little pondosphere. They exist. And they're all like, look at us, we're frogs. But they don't realize, no, they're actually snakes. They are misidentifying themselves as the quirky, mischievous Pepe when they're actually snakes. They're actually snakes. They ate the frogs. and replaced the frogs with snakes. Literally, the snakes slithered into the pond, ate all the frogs, and now poke just their heads out of the water and say, look at us, we're frogs. Don't look at the rest of our body. That clearly indicates that we're a snake. And so they, again, because they have to live in subterfuge, because they have to live in deceit, they can't come out of the pond to get a better perspective and see that they in fact believe bullshit like cargo cults, where they don't understand technology. Here's an example. I have the Rumble bot. It's a nice little program, that you attach to your Rumble account via your API. They don't even know what API means. They don't even know what that means. Had no concept. These people are blithering freaking idiots. All they know is that the airplane comes and drops cargo from the sky, and they get, chocolate bars and Spam. That's all that they know. And they're wondering why the cargo stops coming one day. So they start building these wicker and wooden mock-ups of airplanes, hoping that this will appease the sky gods who've been dropping this precious cargo upon them. They don't comprehend that their island was simply being used by American forces as a military base and was no longer useful, so these people packed up and left. So these poor cargo cults have been building mock-ups in wicker and in wood of the technology they saw the pale-faced individuals who were wearing green uniforms, what they were using to summon the sky gods. Yeah, just go up and look up cargo cults. Look it up on YouTube and watch the videos. The same thing is happening with these pond people. They're delusional, and they see the sky gods everywhere. When's the sky god coming back? There's the sky god. They literally have identified sky god in every, profile and username and channel that they don't know, that they're not familiar with. Because they are a snake sitting in the water, refusing to come out because they don't want to be revealed as a snake. So their perspective is limited from that perspective of being just under the surface of the water with just their eyeballs poking out, trying to convince everyone that they're really a frog. They're hemmed in, boxed in, trapped by their own delusional behavior. They're hemmed in, boxed in, trapped in their own mind prison. Hemmed in, boxed in, and trapped by their own guilt. Knowing that if they were to slither out of the water, everyone would see they were a snake, and they might get beaten with a hoe. Hoe's mad! Hoe's mad! Oh. They might get a snake's justice. People then realize, wow, your group of snakes slithered into the pond and ate all the frogs? So your pond went from fun and mischievous to tainted, evil, racist, Nazi Riris who scream pedophile at everyone they don't like? No, seriously, the leader of these snakes, and they have a leader, a person they look to for spiritual guidance. They have a person who refers to himself as a pastor, unjustifiably, because it's already been confirmed that the organization he claimed to be ordained through, yes, they were in fact asked. And it was confirmed that he is not ordained. Never completed any materials, never got any certifications. His response to that when confronted about that was, well, was Jesus ordained? In other words, you can just declare yourself a pastor, declare yourself a church. Don't bother filing the proper paperwork. Start earning money based upon yourself claiming to be a church, holding a Sunday ministry and a Sunday service online, and collecting money from people, telling people that your ministry is growing. You clearly are operating as if you are a church, yet you haven't filed any of the appropriate paperwork, bragging about how you haven't filed taxes in years on top of all of that, leader snake. And you somehow, some way, believe that you are above the law, not culpable in the slightest because you're a sovereign citizen or some other delusional nonsense drivel because you refuse to slither out of the pond to take a look at the landscape and see just how delusional you are, just like the cargo cults looking for the sky god. The old sky gods. They're going to land and drop off more cargo or drop the parachutes on you. Well, the parachutes and the cargo have stopped coming finally. That's what's happened. They're mad as fuck that some of them have been found out. Some of them have been revealed to be the snakes they are, and they've been removed from certain ponds. Yes, some ponds have finally fought back. One particular big pond fought back recently, and some of these snakes have been banished from the garden. And they're mad. They are big mad, and they're going around to other ponds, and they're pointing the finger at people that they believe did it. They have zero reason to believe that. They just simply want to believe that, like the sky cults, the cargo cults. And what they fail to realize is that people have been watching them over the years. With this one particular big salty briny pond, it's very, very salty. It's got a lot of salt in it. It's a well-known, it's like a one of those salt lakes essentially. It's a giant salty lake. And people have noticed that for years, this particular group of snakes who claim to have been frogs the whole time, big salty frogs. They claim they were the biggest and the saltiest of all frogs. They claim they've always been the, a salty brigade, a platoon of saltiness, of salty frogs. They're really snakes in disguise, okay? Snakes that, will always just poke their head out of the ground and say, look at me, I'm a frog. Oh, I got big bulgy eyes, it's like a frog. I got scales like a frog, look at me. Frogs don't have scales. Well, we're both reptiles. Ha, look at me. Uh-huh. Ignore the forked tongue that's always talking out of both sides of my mouth while they simultaneously sit in one of their ponds that they've turned into a snake den, a snake pit. They say simultaneously that they hate the leader of the salty pond, that he's a fake, he's a phony, he's a charlatan, he's a grifter, he's a lefty, he's a phony, he's a phony, he's a phony. They've been saying this for years. They've been arguing with people who dare defend the main frog hanging out in his salty pond. As soon as that salty frog started getting, people were coming by and throwing him flies, and he was getting extra flies from companies that wanted to help grow his pond. People that thought, hey, here's some supplements to help frogs grow big and strong. Would you mind advertising that in the pond so your frogs can grow big and strong? And King Frog, the salty frog said, sure, I'll do that. Well, this started to rub some of these snakes the wrong way. And now all they complain about is how he's a sellout, you see, and they hate him, you see, and he sucks, and they'd rather watch other shows, you see. They'd rather be in other ponds where there's more snakes. So the snakes are starting to realize that the frogs have pushed back and fought back in the salty pond. And the purge of salty snakes has occurred. The snakes are being pushed out. They're being pushed. They're being removed. And they're mad. Hoes mad, right? They're mad because their own behavior has led to them being removed. While they're speaking with their forked tongue in one pond during the same night, I'm telling you, it's a crazy thing to behold. That while they're in, the king frog, he's got his salty pond going. While he is speaking live, they're over there, and they're in the water and poking their heads out, and they're screaming, You know, we love you so much. Why won't you let the rest of the snakes back in? I know that you recently had snakes removed and you're removing snakes, but that's not right. Why are you so anti-snake? We love you. We've always loved you. We're your biggest fans. While simultaneously slithering out, and going into their own snake-infested pond, which has become a swamp, really. So they go from the salty Frog King and his pond, and they slither out to go and brag about how they're helping to bring the snakes back in. And they're simultaneously all destroying the narrative that they're trying to spin by bashing the salty Frog King in his pond. They're over there kissing his ass and criticizing him for getting rid of snakes, while simultaneously they're over in their swamp, as the snakes they are, saying how much they hate the salty king and how he's a phony and a fraud and a sellout. It is a breathtaking thing to see. The cognitive dissonance to hold two completely diametrically opposed beliefs that they're the biggest of all of the salt king. You know, he's the salty frog king. They're really frogs, and they're the biggest salty frogs ever, and love the salty frog king so much. But then they're over in their own little swamp, as the snakes they are, in the same breath, on the other side of the forked tongue, saying how much they hate the salty frog king and his salty frog queen, calling her any number of awful names, bashing them and destroying them in rhetoric, tearing them apart, revealing that they really aren't fans of the salty frog king. They really are not. They are, what do you call it? Oh yeah, they're lying. Right. Yeah. I mean, they were recently called out by another reasonable human being. He has his own wonderful pond, and it's a place that I personally frequent. And he's a friend. He is a friend. Okay. And one of them, poor deluded frogs, who got involved with the cargo cult, hopped over to that pond and started reeing and screaming about some of the snakes being removed. And he said, hey, look, I don't give a fuck. These people are snakes. I realized they were snakes. And fuck them. Yeah. And I think it's funny that, you know, it's coming back on them. You see, because these snakes, let me give you a little backstory. These snakes had gone into King Salty Frog's pond. So that, you know, the king frog in his pond had a fantastic pond. Many positive frogs and positive voices, and, you know, some spicy rhetoric and some spicy commentary, but nothing, you know, awful and evil and racist and natsaki and, you know, just terrible. Well, these snakes slowly took over his pond. They slowly slithered in and took over his pond, and then they started getting people who were the most, well, I mean, it's fair to say that if one of the frogs in the Salt King's pond actually writes songs about him, has songs remixed about him, and promotes those songs for him, you know, you would think someone who held a stream while he was out ill, and then he said he was going to offer half the super chats that he got that night. He wound up giving all of the super chats he got that night to the king for his recovery. How small or how large the donation was is irrelevant. The fact that he did that, you know, that person was me, by the way. Me, while Salty was out, I actually ran a stream in his stead and agreed to give half of everything that I collected that night to the Salt King via Cash App, which I did. I got a sticker in return from the Salt Queen. Thank you very much. Yeah, those are the things that actual fans really do. Those are the things that, you know, if you're a salty frog and you like to hang out in the salty pond, yeah, you're going to do things like that. If you're a true believer and a true, you know, fan, those are the things you'll do, and you'll ask for nothing in return. But, you know, I've also wrote a song the salty madness for all the frogs in the pond, and also in honor and celebration of the King Salty Frog. None of these snakes can claim the same. None of them can claim that they've done the same. Not a single one. Why is that? Why is that? Oh, because they're not. They're not fans of King Salty Frog. They're just not. They are not. They are, in fact, snakes who are only looking to grift off his name. Hence the reason why they held like a little thing called, what was it? Salty Frog Festival or something to that effect, you know? Oh, it's interesting enough that, you know, it was a friend of myself. He called them out when they said, they called him a grifter, which was kind of weird. He doesn't sell anything. He just reports the news. But this very same group that grifted off the name of the King Salty Frog by holding a public spectacle of snakes getting together and doing their snaky things. They slew that out of the pond enough to go out there and do that sneaky thing in public. That wasn't a grift, you see. Oh, no, not at all. There was no merch sold. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. There was no money made off of that. No, that's totally not a grift, you see. No. The ironic part of this is that they don't understand the irony. They don't understand that. They claim to be people who were first worlders who grew up with the internet all their lives. But they're proving themselves to be cargo cults that don't really truly understand how things are, and they create mock-ups and mockeries of things they see other people doing and then wonder why it's not working. Why is this wicker fucking basket that's in the shape of an airplane not making airplanes appear? Because you're a primitive, low IQ dullard who doesn't comprehend how anything works, thinking that if you ape the actions of others who are more successful, like myself, more successful than you, that it'll somehow magically happen for you. That's the reality of the situation. That's what we're dealing with, this level of stupidity. And that's what's allowed some of them to be scooped up and sent into prison. That's what's got some of them currently under investigation for being associated with this person that was scooped up and sent to prison. They still don't comprehend how serious this is, because the person that was scooped up and sent to prison actually said that they're going to be raising an army of these people, these snakes, to overthrow the government so you can then go in and beat the brakes off a cop. I mean, I think I can interpret beat the brakes off as a death threat. But no. They're the true patriots. They're the true salty frog army, you see, even though they're actually snakes. It's just the way things are. So it's funny to see how they had taken over at some point King Salty's pond, and they started turning into a swamp. People started complaining about that. Hey, have you noticed this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you seen this? And eventually, King Salty noticed too, and then the purge started happening. They started pushing these snakes out, and now the snakes are mad. Now, while the snakes were in control, they started having frogs banned. True fans of the Salty Frog King, they were having them banned, not because they had done anything wrong or promoting anything negative or hurtful or wrong or unlawful or evil. No, because they were criticizing and pointing out that these people weren't really frogs, that they were really snakes. They can't let their subterfuge be revealed. They cannot let that happen, so they had to do what? Oh, quickly, we have to have them banned. You see, a couple of the mods, who have themselves now been removed and banned because of this behavior, took advantage of being a snake and being associated with this group of snakes. And they banned some of the twooest of twooest salty frogs, while screaming that they really weren't two frogs and they were really snakes. So they are projecting upon others their sneakiness, and they're still doing it today. And so here they are now. Finally, the hammer has come down on some of them, the ban hammer, and they're mad. It's their behavior that's done it. And so what they want to make everyone believe is they're being persecuted because there's secret lists being made of people who are just being banned because certain individuals don't like them. How can a person really truly believe that a frog who's been unjustifiably banned from the pond has any sway over the king who has the banhammer, who starts banning the people that had him unjustifiably banned from the pond and then claim to be the victims? It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. They don't comprehend that maybe it was their behavior outside the ponds, inside the ponds, around the ponds, as snakes, their snake-like behavior that led to them getting removed. Maybe it was that. No, they can't ever accept that. You see, if we build more wicker airplanes, you see, then the sky gods will come back and drop more chocolate bars and spam on us, you see. Just keep believing. That's what they really truly believe. Believe what they say, ignore what they do. It's the absolute pinnacle of cult-like behavior. The cargo cults are a cult. Just look them up on YouTube and you'll see. And start extrapolating that behavior and laying it down on top of these frogs. And you know that they start to then turn into snakes, one at a time. They quite literally say terroristic things. While one of them has been arrested and is probably going to be charged with domestic terrorism because of all of his online rhetoric talking about overthrowing the government, being caught with illegal firearms as a felon. Firearms he altered with removed serial numbers. Oh, even worse. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Oh, so you can commit a crime, and if you leave the gun behind, no one can trace it to you. That's really the reason why you would do that. Terrorism. But what do? They go online and call the people that are noticing that they're a group of snakes who looks like they're mounting enough of their snaky snake friends, and they're goading each other into doing what? Terrorism. One of them just got arrested for this. They want to point the finger at everyone else who's pointing it out and calling them the terrorists. That's the most brilliant part of all of this. The absolute gigantic, massive, like Beetlejuice star level of brightness, shining a light on this hypocrisy and the irony, the absolute projection of the snakes pointing at the frogs who have been sounding the alarm, the frogs who were croaking the loudest to say there are snakes in the pond eating the snakes. The snakes in the pond were coming here and they were eating other frogs. They were gobbling frogs up. They were reproducing and turning into snakes as well. If they couldn't turn you into a snake, they would eat you. They would brigade you. They would rip you apart. And everybody saw that and said, I don't want to be ripped apart. I'm just going to say I'm a snake too. That has been happening. It's quite literally happening. You can see it happen in real time sometimes. Snake leader, snake pastor comes out and says, so-and-so and such is a pedophile. No evidence to that, but he just knows that it's a trigger word and knows that it's so defamatory. He knows how bad it is. He knows how damaging it is to someone's reputation. Whether or not it's true or not, he doesn't care about that because he doesn't care about the law. He doesn't understand that you can't do that under the law. But he does it anyway because the law doesn't matter to him. It doesn't apply to him. He's above it. Especially when you look at his criminal history and the 19-plus arrests he's had and the several felonies he's had. Oh, yes. Information is a delicious thing. Information. Yes. One of their popular snake leaders actually has that as a banner on his show. Information is weapons. It's so true. So their salty pastor, their little spiritual guru, who's helped to reinforce their delusional extremist beliefs these snakes all have, has led others to even point and scream the pedophile word at other individuals, people that he's said that about. And so for him to think that he can sit there and say that to somebody and call someone directly, he's actually called people directly these things. He claims he hasn't because he's a Riri. Just like he claimed he doesn't say the N-bomb word And then he was proven that he does. And then he says, well, fine, I do, and here it is. Ha ha ha, what are you going to do about it? You know, it's bizarre. So he claims he's never called anyone a pedophile. Yes, he has. The proof is there in the pudding. You know what they say, the proof is in the pudding. It's not in the pudding, but it's in the tasting. And then he's led other people to do the very same thing. And then he goes on to do it publicly again and again and again and again and again, and then claims he never did it. See, snakes will always be snakes. Remember the old adage that if you're going to, coddle a snake, it's going to bite you. There's the old story, I think it was. The Indian woman who found the snake frozen in the snow said, oh, poor thing, took it home, nursed it back to health. After it got healthy enough, it bit her on the hand, and she lied dying. I said, why'd you do this to me? He goes, hey, you stupid bitch, you knew I was a snake. Yeah, Trump recounted that story recently, too. So, that's the warning to everybody. Remember, snakes are snakes. They're always going to bite. They're always going to kill you. They're always going to try. They're not going to change their nature. And many of these snakes have formed their own cargo cult. And they are trying to continue to indoctrinate other people. And they are crying and reeing and screaming because other people have come along and have mocked and laughed at their mockeries of airplanes and said, these are not airplanes. You're not going to be successful with this. It's not going to happen. You can't keep convincing people that the sky gods are going to come back and drop more cargo on you. The sky gods are done here. They're not going to come back. You can believe all you want and mislead all you want and deceive all you want. You're destroying each other, destroying yourselves. I watched them actually going at each other, calling each other feds, which was hilarious. Banning each other from their own ponds, too. See, this happens when useful idiots live out their usefulness. They get banned. So dumb. It's almost as if someone tried to warn that particular person, that particular snake. He was a frog. He became a snake. And I told him, you better be careful. As soon as you're done being useful to them, they'll consume you. And that's what they did. Don't let that happen to you. Until next time, ta-ta.